The rain didn't stop for 5 days. Not a passing shower. Not the kind of tropical downpour that soaks you for an hour then moves on. This was something different. A slow, relentless, suffocating wall of water that stalled over the Hawaiian Islands and refused to leave. And by the time it did, parts of Maui looked like they had been scraped clean. This is what a Kona storm does when it goes wrong. Most people have never heard the term. It doesn't carry the name recognition of a hurricane or a tropical cyclone. There are no dramatic satellite spirals on the evening news, no category numbers, no evacuation orders that come days in advance. A Kona low slips in quietly, a slow-moving upper-level pressure system that bends the usual weather patterns of the Pacific, draws in moisture from the southwest, and dumps it on places that were never built to receive it. Hawaii gets these storms most winters, typically between November and April. They are known, they are expected, and for decades, they have been manageable. But what arrived in March of 2026 was not manageable. 2 separate Kona systems struck the Hawaiian Islands within the same month. The first system moved through between March 10th and 15th. The second arrived around March 19th, bringing its worst impacts to Oahu and Maui on the 20th and 21st. And what made both of them extraordinary wasn't just their strength, it was their direction. These storms pulled moisture from the southwest, targeting the leeward sides of the islands, the valleys and slopes that normally sit in the rain shadow, the places that almost never flood. The neighborhoods where the drainage infrastructure was designed for a different kind of rain entirely. By the time the second system reached full force, Upcountry Maui had received more than 40 inches of rain in 5 days. Not 40 inches in a season, not 40 inches in a month. 40 inches in 5 days. For context, the average annual rainfall in much of the continental United States is somewhere between 30 and 50 inches. Maui absorbed that in less than a week. But that's only part of the story. The numbers alone don't capture what 40 inches of rain does to a place like Maui. To understand it, you have to understand the geography. Maui is not flat. It is a volcanic island built on steep ridges and narrow valleys, landscapes carved over millions of years by the very water now threatening to consume them. The streams that run through those valleys are not gentle. They respond immediately to rainfall. They rise fast, they move fast, and when they overflow, they do not ask permission. The Yao Valley sits in the heart of Maui, a place of extraordinary natural beauty. Walls of green rising sharply on either side of the Yao Stream, which winds quietly through the valley floor on most days. Visitors come here, families have lived here for generations. The stream is part of the landscape, part of the rhythm of. During the second Kona storm, the Yao Stream became something else entirely. A couple who had lived in their home in the valley had to be evacuated before the structure was destroyed. Not damaged, destroyed. The stream rose and moved against the walls of the house and then through them, and then the house was simply gone. Swept into the current, the family left with what they could carry. What remained of the structure was carried toward the ocean. This is not an abstract damage report. This is a family standing on a hill watching years of their life disappear into brown water. In Upcountry Maui, the situation was different, but no less alarming. Trees came down across roads, across driveways, across power lines. Utility poles snapped. Cable lines fell. Many residents found themselves completely trapped, unable to leave their properties without a chainsaw to cut through the debris blocking their driveways. A local nonprofit called Malama Kula organized crews specifically to clear those paths, going house to house, neighborhood to neighborhood, because official resources could not reach everyone fast enough. Roads across Maui collapsed, bridges failed, culverts designed to channel stormwater were overwhelmed and destroyed. Sinkholes opened in roadways. Boulders rolled down from hillsides and settled across lanes. In some areas, rivers began flowing in directions they had never flowed before, not following channels or drainage systems, but carving their own paths through whatever land lay in front of them. East Maui, and particularly the community of Hana, was cut off entirely. The road into Hana, already one of the most winding and precarious stretches of highway in the United States, was rendered impassable by the combined weight of washouts, fallen trees, and collapsed infrastructure. Residents reported hearing loud explosions during the storm, believed to be electrical infrastructure failures as power lines and utility systems buckled under the strain. The community was isolated. No road in, no road out. State officials coordinated helicopter airdrops of food, thousands of pounds of supplies were thousands of woodwas squares to reach the Hana community while the roads remained closed. Yet what comes next could be even worse. To understand why this storm hit so hard, you have to understand why Hawaii's leeward coasts are uniquely vulnerable, and why that vulnerability has been quietly growing for decades. Hawaii's trade winds blow predominantly from the northeast. This means the windward sides of each island, the northeast-facing slopes, receive the bulk of Hawaii's rainfall year-round. The infrastructure on those slopes, the drainage systems, the culverts, the road design, the vegetation, all of it has evolved over generations to handle that moisture. The leeward sides, facing southwest, are different. They are drier. The soil in many leeward areas is shallower, with less organic material to absorb and hold water. The vegetation is sparser. The ground has less capacity to soak up sudden rainfall. And critically, the infrastructure was built to match. Drainage systems on Hawaii's leeward coasts were engineered for historical baselines. Many of the culverts, roads, and water management systems date back to the 1960s, designed to handle what was then considered a 100-year storm. That standard, the 100-year event, was the benchmark of safety for generations of engineers and planners. In March of 2026, two 100-year storms arrived within 3 weeks of each other. The National Weather Service confirmed that the rainfall totals recorded during these events were record-breaking for Kona low systems. The usual patterns did not apply. The usual safeguards were not enough. What a Kona low does, at its core, is redirect the flow of atmospheric moisture. Instead of the standard northeast trade wind pattern, a Kona system generates southwesterly winds that drag warm, saturated air directly onto the slopes and into the valleys that were never designed to receive it. The orographic effect, the way mountains force rising air to cool and drop its moisture, then concentrates that rainfall in specific locations. Pu'ukukui in the west. Maui Mountains recorded nearly 32 inches over the 5-day period. Upcountry crossed 40 inches. These are not just impressive numbers. They are structural failure thresholds. They are the point at which soil saturates completely, at which slopes lose cohesion, at which streams become indistinguishable from the land around them. Landslides triggered across multiple parts of the island. Slopes that had held for decades let go. Material that had been stationary for lifetimes moved downhill in hours. And now, Sionosphere history may be repeating itself. Maui already knew what catastrophic loss looked like, less than 3 years before this storm, in August of 2023. The deadliest American wildfire in over a century tore through Lahaina on the western coast of Maui. More than 100 people died. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ash. The total damage was estimated at more than $5.5 billion. As of early 2026, the community was still in the middle of that recovery. Homes being rebuilt, infrastructure still being restored, trauma still raw. And now this, when the second Kona storm arrived, Lahaina flooded again. The same community that had watched fire consume its streets in 2023 now watched water pour through them. The psychological weight of that is difficult to overstate. For the people of West Maui, disaster has not been a once-in-a-lifetime event. It has become a pattern, a drumbeat, and each event arrives before the previous one has fully healed. The engineering challenges of rebuilding after the wildfires were already enormous. Soil in fire-affected areas loses much of its capacity to hold water. The intense heat creates hydrophobic layers just below the surface that cause rainfall to run off rather than absorb. That means fire-scarred terrain is more vulnerable to flooding and landslides than it was before the fire. The Lahaina area carried that vulnerability directly into the path of both Kona storms. History, in this case, does not repeat with precision. It compounds. Each event leaves a landscape more fragile than the one before it, and the storms do not wait for recovery to complete. The parallels to past Kona events are instructive but incomplete. The 2018 and 2021 Kona lows each brought similar conditions: 5 to 15 inches of rain on the Big Island, localized flooding, manageable damage. Those events were absorbed. Communities cleaned up and moved on. What happened in March of 2026 was not a larger version of those events. It was a different category of event wearing the same name, because what happens next could rewrite maps. As of late March 26, 2026, the Hawaii Department of Transportation had issued a preliminary statewide damage estimate of approximately $23 million. Maui County alone accounted for roughly $7 million of that figure. These numbers represent assessments made while the second storm was still active, meaning the final costs had not yet been calculated, and in many areas, damage surveys had not yet been possible to conduct. Governor Josh Green declared a state of emergency for Hawaii. The declaration unlocks state and potentially federal resources for recovery and allows agencies to move more quickly on emergency repairs. The Maui Emergency Management Agency was actively accepting damage reports from residents and coordinating assessment teams across the island. In Hana, the food airdrops continued while road crews worked to determine whether any of the collapsed infrastructure could be stabilized quickly enough to reopen access. The timeline for that work was uncertain. The community was functioning but isolated, dependent on helicopter logistics for basic supplies. In Upcountry Maui, chainsaw crews from Malama Kula continued moving through neighborhoods, clearing driveways and roads blocked by fallen trees. Power restoration was ongoing, but widespread downed lines and structural damage to utility poles meant that some areas faced extended outages. The full scale of the damage to phone and cable infrastructure had not yet been assessed. The National Weather Service had issued flash flood warnings for the period of March 22nd and 23rd, followed by a flood advisory on the 23rd as the system began to weaken. GOES 18 satellite imagery showed clearing skies moving toward the islands in the days following the second storm's peak. Stream gauges operated by the USGS were showing flows beginning to recede, but the broader risk picture was not reassuring. Forecasters were warning of the potential for additional heavy rainfall later in the week. The ground across much of Maui was fully saturated. Slopes that had survived 2 rounds of extreme rainfall were now at their maximum instability. Any additional moisture, even a modest rain event, would not be absorbed the way it would under normal conditions. It would run, and on a fully saturated slope, even moderate runoff can trigger landslides and flash flooding that rival the original disaster. The infrastructure that was already compromised, the collapsed culverts, the failed bridges, the damaged roads, this meant that water had fewer channels to follow. When it moves, it will find its own path, and the communities downstream and downslope have already spent 5 days watching what that path can look like. The $23 million estimate will almost certainly grow. Infrastructure repairs of this scale, bridges, culverts, roads, drainage systems, rarely come in at preliminary figures. And that number does not yet account for private property losses, agricultural damage in upcountry Maui's farming communities, or the long-term costs of slope stabilization in areas where landslide risk has been elevated. It also does not account for the cost of Lahaina flooding again. There is a question that no official damage report will answer, but that sits underneath all of this. What happens when a community is asked to recover from fire and then flood, and then asked to do it again faster with less, while the forecasters are already watching the next system forming? The experts who study Kona lows will tell you that these storms are not unusual. They will tell you that the Hawaiian Islands have experienced them for as long as records have been kept, and for much longer than that. They will tell you that the science of these systems is well understood, the pressure dynamics, the moisture pathways, the orographic concentration of rainfall. What they cannot tell you, what no one can tell you, is whether the combination of saturated soils, compromised infrastructure, ongoing wildfire recovery, and aging drainage systems built to 1960 standards has created a threshold that the islands have never before been asked to cross. Whether Maui, specifically, has reached a point where the land simply cannot absorb what the atmosphere is delivering. Whether the next Kona low, and there will be a next one probably before the end of April, will find an island that is still in the process of counting its losses from this one. 40 inches of rain in 5 days did not exhaust the atmosphere's capacity to produce more. And the ground has not yet had a single dry day to recover. Stay safe, stay informed, and keep your eyes on the islands.